It seems that yet again the British lawmakers find themselves in a bit of a pickle. Apparently, when they asked people in 2020 to stay home and stay safe, and they sticked an army of police officers to find them, and you had videos coming out with police officers looking into people's shopping bags and making their best in order to penetrate into the life of the private citizen to provide safety and discomfort. And they would find people for sunbathing and all of that good stuff to make sure that they are safe. The politicians were unsafe. The politicians were going out partying, and they were drinking expensive wine, and they were risking their safety. If only we could turn time back. If only we would have a time machine to get people back into the past and vote these politicians out of an office to keep them home, to keep them safe, because they didn't know what they were doing. They risked their safety. So they should have been held outside of the office so that they can be at home and benefit from that safety, and those army of police officers making sure that they didn't shop any non-essential goods. And while we're on the subject of police officers who were very effective using propaganda on Twitter, warning people to stay at home and stay safe, where were those police officers when the politicians were partying? Why did no police officer knock at these people's doors? Because it seems that the parties were a lot more extensive than initially thought. Apparently, sources told the Mirror that the Prime Minister encouraged aides to let off steam despite indoor socializing being banned under lockdown rules. So instead of the Prime Minister saying, okay, look, this year, can you please calm down a little bit? Just this year. Just for a couple of days, just lay low. We need to set an example to the public. We can't lose public trust. We need to act decent and as leaders. No, instead, go out partying. That is the example of leadership. So those peasants, we can party and they cannot, so that they know who's in charge. Mind-blowing, right? The regular event was so popular that the staff invested a $142 drink fridge to keep their bottles of wine. 142 pounds drink fridge. I don't have a 142 pounds drink fridge in my house. Jesus. Can you imagine how many drinks? How did the police not manage to find about these events? Did they swear utmost secrecy? It was so secret that the police didn't know how to find. They will find your hate speech on Twitter in a second, but they can't find this. You know why? It's because Twitter Trust and Safety Team failed that day. Twitter needs to be held accountable for the British politicians' party. If only the Trust and Safety Council did a better job to keep the politicians safe. I mean, Twitter should be trialed for endangering British security. Think about it. Like, it was the responsibility of Twitter's Trust and Safety to keep people safe, and they couldn't keep the politicians safe. The politicians of the British country. Can you imagine that? Oh my God. I mean, I'm not the one putting this responsibility on Twitter. Twitter themselves say they have a responsibility. Oh, so if they fail at the responsibility, then now it's time for accountability. This is what people should demand. But unfortunately, we don't have accountability. We have rulers and peasants, and it seems the rulers get to gorge themselves on taxpayer wine, while the taxpayers stay at home shivering in fear because the police is stuck up their ass. Sources claim that aides took turns on Friday to visit the local Tesco Metro in Westminster with a wheelie suitcase to fill up 34-bottle capacity fridge. Here's another question. Why were they so happy? What were they drinking on? Because in 2020, I remember just being bombarded with the numbers of cases and the numbers of deaths. And I kept seeing politicians very worried, very concerned, and saying, look, you need to stay at home because it's for the good of the community. You need to protect grandma. We need to have these measures in place. And meanwhile, the politicians were drinking. Why were they drinking? What's the reason for you to be this happy? What's the celebration? I mean, people, the cases and the deaths, right? What is the reason for celebration? And it's not just in the UK, by the way. I mean, I remember in Canada, Justin Trudeau did a similar thing. Like, he told people that on Easter, they have to be more inventive with how they spend time together because they shouldn't gather up, because that's a super spreader event. And right after that, he took his entire security detail and traveled way across the country to visit his parents on Easter like a normal person. It is just, again, you don't point out hypocrisy in order to get people to stop being hypocritical. You point out hypocrisy to outrage people so that they question how they do things in the future. Like, was it worth it voting these people into office? And by the way, I have absolutely no doubt that Labour would have done exactly the same thing. Like, I don't think Labour would have adopted the Swedish model. But perhaps Labour wouldn't be partying. Or if they did, maybe they wouldn't get caught. Who knows? But this is just... Look, there is an IQ test going on here. It's like, if you are telling people to stay at home and stay safe, and you're encouraging your own aides to go drinking, and you're encouraging politicians to drink, when you can't for 1 year, like, you can't stop yourself from 1 year from drinking. Is it too much to ask? Or if you have to do this, you could literally just take a plane and fly somewhere else. Because that was allowed for people in the UK at the time. They could have traveled. They could have just gone away from the UK to the Bahamas or whatever. Like, if you are rich, you could have avoided the lockdowns. You could have just flown away to any country you wanted. They didn't even do that. No, they had to party at home. So either they don't think they're going to get held accountable because technology has developed so much that they think they can crack down on any misinformation or people exposing them, or they're painfully stupid. I don't know which one is it, but I'm curious to see how Labour is surging in the polls right now after this. And again, it's not that I think Labour would have done anything differently. So apparently, he apologized yet again. Yes, because telling people, oh, we're sorry, is going to fix it. At least drop the pretense of equality. At least say that we live in a monarchy again, and you have people that are our betters, and then you have everyone else. At least let's have that ideology of the medieval times back in the world so that people can know their place. It is so interesting because there was another case with the Austrian president who was also caught breaking quarantine. And he was like, oh, well, that's fine. I'm like everyone else, I'll pay the fine. And it's like, really, like everyone else. So while you're taking jobs away from people and you're making them unemployed, and you have a wage that is way above what most people earn in their lifetime, you're going to tell people that you paying a fine is the same, like someone that's unemployed paying the same fine? I don't know. I don't think so. You know, like, isn't that the whole thing why we need to have progressive taxation? Because the rich pay, even though they pay more taxes, like their percentage isn't fair and blah, blah, blah. This is what I don't understand. It's like, how can the average Joe have these conflicting ideologies in his mind, these conflicting ideas in his brain without short-circuiting? It is interesting how the mind of the public can work, having two opposing ideas in their head at the same time. So I'm really curious to see where this scandal is going to go, because initially it started with the Conservative attended a Christmas party, and Boris Johnson went on camera saying, no, we didn't. But if we did, every safety measure would have been taken. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that's what the average Joe could have told the police officer who was knocking at his door. It's like, there's no party here, officer, but if there was, we took all the safety measures, okay? And now the scandal is deepening. Now it seems that these wine time Fridays were a common thing. And it does seem that they were spending so much money on wine, they have to buy a new refrigerator. It is insane, you know? And this is why it's the most important thing in the world. Like, if anything needs to exist in a country, is that everyone should be under the law. Because if they thought that people can't go through this, like if they thought, look, it is humanly impossible to tell people on Christmas not to celebrate, because we can't do it, like we ourselves cannot subject ourselves to this, then they shouldn't have passed the legislation. If you can't do it, why do you expect other people to? If you can't keep grandma safe, how do you expect other people to? Poor grandma, no one thinks about her, huh? And by the way, wasn't Boris sick with COVID in 2020? Is it unreasonable to ask if he got it from one of these events? Did he give it to someone? Was he a super spreader? Was he like that tennis man from Australia who's getting banned? By the way, I gotta give props to the government of Australia. At least you don't see them partying. Or maybe they are, but they're hiding it a lot better. Which one is it? I remember when in Romania we had a president who had austerity measures, and he needed to have those measures because otherwise Romania would have gone bankrupt. But at least he would refuse to take his paycheck for that time. At least he would refuse to go with the limousine all the way to the palace. He would drive his own car as a show of solidarity, right? Because apparently in some nations, people still care about the optics, and they still show that, well, at least we shouldn't upset the masses. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.